Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. I do appreciate you tuning in. Today let's review Remnant from the Ashes. This is Dark Souls with guns, although it's not entirely true. This is a third-person action game that has stamina-based combat against a multitude of hard-hitting enemies and brutal bosses. It does share that sort of blueprint of Dark Souls, where you run around and dodge and roll and slash at the right moment, that sort of thing. You have to read certain enemies to dispose of them. Now, the graphics of Remnant are decent enough. They're not super detailed, they're servable at best, but some of the environments look really great. Some landmarks in the world, in the environments, they look very distinct, very nice. There's quite a different look and feel to various areas. There's this post-apocalyptic level, there's this sort of swamp area. There's quite a bit of diversity in the environment, until you realize that they're basically all straight lines and corridors. Nothing like the elaborate designs of Dark Souls, the connectivity between the areas and the verticality. Now, that has to do with the fact that the game prouds itself for having procedural generated levels, so the geometry of a certain area is mixed around every time you replay the game. The random nature of that also makes it so that the design feels somewhat boring. You go through the areas, you think, oh yeah, I've seen this before, but it's now a little different, you know? The building that was empty and just sort of crumbled down is first time was to the left, now it's to the right, that sort of thing. And it is also possible, because of the procedural generated nature of the game, is that you can completely miss out on certain dungeons, on certain NPCs that you'll never meet, or a certain piece of gear that you'll never find, because the dungeon will not pop up in your playthrough. And I understand it on one hand, because every time you replay the game, there's a chance that the dungeon will appear in your game. But on the other hand, I just don't like being locked out of content. You know, if I play a game, I want to play through it. I want to play through it all. You know, I want to see all that the game has to offer, and I don't want to restart the game just to see certain dungeons. You know, have a chance of seeing a dungeon I haven't seen before. I just don't like that. But the highlight of the game here is the gunplay. The shooting in this game is just super satisfying. Guns pack a punch, the feedback, the enemies that will stagger if you shoot them, they just get blown away, and it just sounds great too. Also, the creature design is fantastic. I mean, how the developers came up with some disturbing monstrosities is beyond me. Really Lovecraftian stuff. It just really is very, very cool, and it moves great. The movesets of the enemies is just very fluent. And the enemies are just relentless. They're going to eat your face. They're going to pursue you all the way through the level. Because other than Dark Souls, the gunplay, while satisfying, I have to say, again, it's also somewhat limited. I mean, the only thing you can do in this game is shoot, right? It's not melee combat focused like in Dark Souls. That leaves more room for strategy, I think, because melee combat, it really depends on certain movesets of certain weapons, right? But here you just have guns, which means you sort of point at the enemy and start shooting. There is a good selection of guns here, and armors, and also certain rings and items that will give you certain bonuses and buffs to find the world. So it's really fun just to create your perfect build for your character. There are also weapon mods that give you specials that are very handy during combat. And the best thing of all, I think, is that you can do it in co-op. And it's just a lot more fun than playing this game in single player. And I actually think that this is, other than Dark Souls, primarily a co-op game. You know, this game should be played with one other guy, at least one other guy, or two even. And Dark Souls primarily is a single player game where people can jump in and help you out with certain bosses and that sort of thing, right? But I think Remnant more is a co-op experience. And the thing about the co-op is that, again, it is a whole lot of fun. You know, the jumping into another player's world is very easy. the jump in, jump out sort of mechanic. It is really cool. On the other hand, there are just sort of two downsides at this point to the co-op gameplay, is that it is very possible that you auto-team up with a player that is way stronger than you, which means that the other player will sort of blow everything away even before you get a chance to get a hit in, basically. So the matchmaking is a bit off, so you have to have a bit of luck to get a player in that is sort of more or less your level, and where you can sort of team up and you know, do things together where you sort of complement each other. But I had so many sessions where somebody else just jumped in, and the guy had some amazing strong gun that just sort of blew bosses out of the sky. It was a bit over the top. Another thing with the co-op or the multiplayer is that I was going through this dungeon, right, and I came to this boss, and there was an option there to kill the boss or either talk to him, and there were various results to that, right? If you kill the boss, you get a certain item, and if you talk to the boss, you get another item. So in my playthrough, I decided, well, I want to kill the boss, right? But the other player that jumped in was way ahead of me. He ran to the boss, and he already interacted with the boss so that I couldn't kill the boss anymore. So the other player was actually playing my game, and that was just not fun. You know, I just wanted to kill the boss. I wanted to have that specific weapon or that item that the boss would drop. But okay, well, it's, you know, in the end, it's not that bad, but it felt a bit odd. But overall, it is a lot of fun. The shooting, the different enemy types, the bosses. Although the bosses, just, you know, one last thing about the bosses, there are a whole lot of different bosses here, but I have to say some of them are just kind of cheaty in a way that they also spawn a lot of these smaller enemies, and most of the time I just died because the smaller enemies got me instead of the boss. So that felt a bit cheap, you know. It put me against the boss itself, not the minions. And you know, one boss with minions is fine, but I don't need almost all the bosses that spawn minions. Is just kind of over the top and just unnecessary, and it sort of tries to disguise that the boss is kind of you know, you kind of, I mean, again, maybe that sort of ties into the point that I made earlier, where it's just basically you're just shooting bosses, right? And there isn't a whole lot else to it. So maybe the developers thought, well, let's mix things up, make it a little different if we spawn a whole bunch of these minions and enemies that the player has to dispose of. Especially in co-op, that's not too big of a deal. I mean, one player can start wiping out all the minions, and the other guy can sort of focus on the boss. But still, you know, it's not always that balanced in a way, I guess. Anyway, to summarize things, it's not a great game. It's a well done game. It's a lot of fun. It's well done, and yeah, I think I can recommend this. I just hope that when they do a sequel, they sort of address these issues that I just pointed out and make it even better. So yeah, that's it for me. That's Remnant from the Ashes. What do you think about this game? Let me know in the comment section below. Please subscribe if you like my content, and see you next time.
Still standing. Got all my parts?